Many of you know this morning's breakfast is sponsored by the Broadcom Foundation. And the Broadcom Foundation is a premier foundation in the United States, and I think around the world, really elevating STEM education. Broadcom Foundation is best known for us at the Society of Broadcom Masters. How many of you have heard of Broadcom Masters? Yeah. And Broadcom Masters is the premier middle school science competition in the United States. The person who is the visionary behind the Broadcom Foundation is Paula Golden. She is the president, and she and I spoke about the affiliated fairs. I mean, if I'm the biggest champion of the affiliated fairs, Paula's right next to me. Paula and I believe of the incredible, extraordinary potential that these fairs have, and how we need to be able to build your capacity. And just, one side note, myself, Michelle Glidden, who many of you know, our Chief Program Officer, Rachel Alper, my Chief of Staff, and Paula Golden, and I worked on a proposal to how to support the affiliated fairs. And really help all of you in terms of your capacity, but to be able to do more. So Paula Golden is an exceptional advocate for STEM learning and project-based learning, and she's also part now of a new national effort called STEM Ecosystems, which seek to foster community-wide collaborations around STEM education. So it is my incredible honor and privilege to introduce Paula Golden to all of you. Many of you may know her already. Let's give a big round of applause.
Good morning, everybody. This is so exciting for me. You have no idea. I've dreamed of talking to all of you in one room for, I don't know, ever since Broadcom got involved in Science Fair directly in 2010, when our foundation was just founded and we were looking for a way to really make a difference. And my CEO at the time at Broadcom, I said, we got to find something that brands us as thought leaders in STEM. And I said, you and I, we're going to be a committee of two, and we're going to find that opportunity. And so I got a phone call from him. I think I'd been working for the company for all of, I don't know, maybe 6 days. And I get a call from the CEO at 7:30 in the morning saying, turn on your TV. Michelle Obama has a Intel National Talent Search, Science Talent Search winner next to her. Why don't we have somebody sitting next to the president's wife? And so he was taking me seriously. He understood the gravity of what I was asking for. So my colleague Maria Ronsky, who's here, who's our CFO, and I conspired to take a lot of money off of the table for kind of more, not mundane, but less focused community work with the budget that we had to become the sponsors of the Broadcom Masters, which stands for, as some of you know, Math, Applied Science, Technology, and Engineering for Rising Stars. And we've never looked back. This has been the cornerstone of what we do. So this is one of my favorite pictures. This is Henry Samueli and his wife, Susan. Henry found his passion, and you'll appreciate this as people involved in Science Fair. He found his passion for radio frequency and communications technologies when he was 15 and put together a radio on the floor of his living room in Hollywood, California. He's the son of Holocaust survivors who went to public school and made his way to UCLA, where he was a superstar, the first person at UCLA to be hired from within the Department of Engineering, which now bears his name. He founded Broadcom along with another gentleman, and the rest is history. And he, because of his childhood ambitions and interests and passions, really has embraced our mission, and quite frankly enbraced Broadcom Masters. He has 2 awards, one of $10,000 and one of $25,000 for the U.S. competition to encourage innovation among the young kids. Those are two of our superstars, one of whom is competing in Intel ISEP this week. Avery's from Massachusetts, and Eleanor is from the Midwest. Is there a trick to this? Am I missing something? Oh, there we go. All right, and just so you know, we're proud to have students here from all of these countries. I want to thank every director in the room who has influenced our program, promoted the program, and encouraged kids to participate at the national level abroad as well as every state. It's our hope that we can expand our program over time, but these young people come as student observers. As you know, many of you, they travel with their delegation, and you'll see them wandering around in their red shirts tomorrow at Public Day. Don't hesitate to visit with them, particularly if you're interested in expanding what you're doing in the middle school, which we think is really the critical transition point for most of these kids in STEM. If they haven't seen a vision for themselves by the time they get to high school, they may not take the courses which will allow them to go on, as we know. So we consider this a really pivotal point in the STEM learning career, path, and we're really proud to be part of that solution. So this is what the world looks like. I don't know how many of you remember this. Raise your hands if you remember this. I want to say, okay, all right, let's put ourselves on the map, us boomers. All right, so in 1968, we had that cool Princess phone. Most of us were pretty excited about it. We thought it was really cool. We had the coolest cars that actually had automated tops for the first time. And Singapore became an independent nation. So you see the picture on the top there, pretty amazing. There's Singapore with sampans, you know, and all. Look down here, 50 years later. This is pretty stunning. We don't have phones anymore like that. We don't see telephone cords, rarely, except in old movies. And we have cloud computing. And most of you probably know that means we're talking through some terminal out in Norway or some Arctic place where those cloud terminals sit, those big servers. We're on the verge of having the smartest cars on the planet. That's a Google car. And the picture at the end there is Singapore. For anybody who hasn't been there yet, I got to tell you, I was awestruck. I had no idea how quickly a nation could build itself into the smartest city, second smartest in the planet, in 10 years. Quite stunning. So, our kids that we're working with, they only know for cell phones. But they are part of something that is called Industry 4.0. Is there anybody in this room that knows this term? One or two of you? Okay. Not too many. Good. I'm giving you information that was given to me by some of the smartest engineers at Broadcom and at UCI, where we do a lot of, University of California at Irvine, where we do a lot of collaborations. And Greg Washington, who is the dean of the School of Engineering, the Samueli School of Engineering there too, presented some of these slides, and I just thought I would share them with you. He did this presentation this week, and I was kind of blown away. So here's where we are. I mean, we know about industrial revolutions, and we know that there was a steam engine in the 1800s. We know that we began to look at electricity as a fundamental tenet of the next revolution in the 19th century. We know that in our generation, when those cool cars and Princess phones were made available, that we were dealing with the automation productions and electronics that came out of World War II. And particularly here in the United States, we enjoyed the fruits of that third industry revolution mightily, and of course ultimately spread it around the world. But we're in the fourth industrial revolution. It is stunning, and I'm going to share with you what it looks like, largely because as we educate our kids to do science fair and ultimately engage in the communities where we're going to raise them up, not only the ones that are fortunate enough to make it into these programs, but all the kids that we need in order to go forward as a global community, we need to understand Industry 4.0. All right, these kids' world is global. There's my little iPhone. We have some secret sauce in there. And this is what the world looks like for Apple's iPhone. You can see, we have suppliers all over the world. The iPhone is made with metals, precious metals and other metals that are mined all over the world. They have suppliers and manufacturers all over the world. And so this phone, like many, many things that these kids touch, and many, many products that they will innovate, are going to be generated in a global manufacturing society that's tied to that cloud that we talked about up there in Norway. This is to show you guys, this blew me away. This is the rapid change that technology has today when kids come up with a good idea. And you know this because you've got kids who want to get patents with 3D printers, making their products with 3D printers. Check that out. It took us 38 years to get the radio in the hands, in the ears of 50 million people. 13 years for television. Cell phone in 7 years. That's been the real stunner, guys. That one really changed the game. Facebook in 2 years. Took 3 weeks for Pokemon Go to find its way into the hands of 50 million users. Now, that just gives you an idea of how fast things are changing. And when I think about that in the context of science fair, I think about us changing our own mindset on where these kids come from. They don't know for anything but cell phones and apps and fast-paced change. They don't know for it. They are, for all practical purposes, wired differently than all of us who are seeking to incite them and inspire them through science fair. This is another slide I really like because it shows you, since the invention of the wheel in Neolithic times, we actually have advanced to the point where at that far end there, you see how fast and how rapidly innovation is driving the international community. This slide, again, you're welcome to this deck. Anybody that's interested in having it, you're more than welcome to it. The last slide over there, after we get past the Chevy from the 50s, the 53 Chevy, which I always liked that car, is a picture actually of the cloud, again, using cloud computing that will power a Jaguar, and Jaguar is teaming up with Waymo to build an electric automated car. This was announced last week, and the cloud will drive that. So this is the world, and this is how far we've come in a relatively short period of time, but that's their world. They don't go this slow anymore. What happened here? What happened? There we go. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Now, some of the challenges they have. This slide shows you what has happened with regard to population growth in a very short period of time, really since about 2000, Common Era, BC, the Common Era, to the Common Era of 2010. Pretty striking. This challenge brings something that I think we're all aware of, and we see it in the types of projects that our science fair students are bringing forward. They are mightily aware that their world moves fast, that they're driven by new technologies in the Industry 4.0, and they have to grapple with these big issues: sustainability, pollution, and this is one that gets me, water. We're going to have 1 ton of plastic to every 3 tons of fish in our oceans by 2025. That's a scary thought. Now, when you look at the projects that your kids are turning out, I know Amaya mentioned this in terms of our interest in getting more involved in local community fairs. We need to pay attention to their challenges. In today's world, wars are really fought on a local level. Let's hope it stays that way. Our diseases are more or less controlled by medicine, again, in terms of looking at like worldwide plagues, this kind of thing. So far, we're doing okay. And we actually have conquered hunger. Hunger happens where there are political problems, not because there's a lack of the abundance of ability to feed billions of people. It's quite remarkable. That doesn't mean those don't exist. It just means they're different. These are the challenges our kids face today. These are the things you're starting to see evolve into science fair projects one way or another, whether it's on a big scale or with just a local problem with a kid looking at pollution along a river near their home. So, okay, what does Indice 4.0 really mean? And by the way, not many people raised their hands knowing this term. I heard it this morning on the news. So I'm trying to give you guys a heads up that this is what we're starting to hear in the marketplace, not just at the universities or at places like Broadcom where they invented the tools for this new revolution. We need to look, and I'm preaching to the choir on this one, guys, and I know it. We need to look at education through a different lens. I love this slide of this lady on the, I wish I knew, there we go, sitting on this ergonomic seat. It cracks me up. I mean, you know, is this an improvement of the way we teach kids? I don't think so. You still have one person in front. They're expected to know everything, poor things, and God knows no one does. At the middle school, this is a bigger problem, I think worldwide, because we don't necessarily have our experts in any particular scientific field or mathematical field. So we're asking a lot of the teacher in front here. So this whole notion of reading, writing, and arithmetic has really got to go out the window. And we need to look at a model that really really sets a new bar for what we're teaching our kids, to think critically, collaborate, communicate, huge. Be creative and confident. Why confidence? And we're going to come back to that in a second. And these are the areas, again, preaching to the choir. You know we need inquiry-based learning in the classroom. You know. And work in your projects, the kids' projects that you see at your fairs. We need to work on collaborative learning and not look at scientists and engineers as solo players, solo flyers, like they've got it all upstairs all by themselves. And we need to look at project-based learning and not only find a way in the science fairs, but to get back to getting that into the classrooms. How we do that, I think, is one of our greatest challenges in creating STEM pathways that are going to result in homegrown workforces in all of our communities around the world. So I'm going to invite, where are you? Okay, I'm going to invite Jeremy Shore up. He's going to tell you a little bit about the ecosystems. Now, the ecosystem, some of you in this room, I know that there are a number of science fairs that are already engaged with their local ecosystems. And we're going to explain just a little bit about what we're trying to do, both nationally and internationally, to develop a community and collaboration that allows science fair to be at the centerpiece of our STEM pathways, multiple STEM pathways for young people so they can develop inquiry-based learning, collaboration, and develop those important 21st century skills that we think will really save us as a planet. Jeremy?
Good morning, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. My name is Jeremy Shore. I work with the Teaching Institute for Excellence in STEM, TIES, which is an international organization that works with schools, museums, universities to help them think about and improve their STEM programming. TIES is also really tightly involved in this concept called the National STEM Learning Ecosystems. My daughter and I have this tradition. Every night, we lay in her bed at bedtime, and she asks me some kind of big question, and I try to answer it, right? It's become kind of a contest where she tries to find a question that I don't know the answer to, because if I know the answer, I answer it and she has to go to bed. But if I don't know the answer, we talk about what the answers might be and how we might research and find the solution tomorrow and things of that nature. When she was about 3 years old, we were laying in bed, and she said, "Daddy, could all the people who are on the world fit inside the world?" And I said, I don't know. I sort of assume so. Certainly if the earth were hollow, and we talked a little bit about how we might find the answer to this, to this problem tomorrow. But I asked her, why are you asking that question? Why is that something that you're curious about? And she said, because if all the people who are on the world went inside the world, and they all went like this, then the earth would break, and I could go to outer space. And I said, you could go to outer space without destroying the planet. if you became an astronaut? And her response at 3 was, well, I can't because astronauts are boys. Now, this is a girl who has lived in a community, a family community, a school community, who has never said anything, even at that age, except for you can be anything that you want. But when we looked through her books the next day, when we talked about, we live outside of Cleveland and there's a NASA research center outside of Cleveland. When we talked about the folks from NASA who'd visited her school, they were all white men, right? In the books, the visitors. So it really speaks to this problem that you are already addressing in really, really incredible ways. Our students have to be exposed to these concepts. They have to be exposed to these jobs. Before they can believe, before they can envision themselves in these positions, they have to see other people who face similar problems, similar challenges, who look like them in these positions. This is one of the big rallying cries of the formation of the STEM ecosystems. And as I walked around here yesterday and met several of you and met several of your students, I see how much overlap there is between this initiative and the STEM Ecosystems Project. So the STEM Ecosystems Project was founded in 2015. This is not the slide I thought I was on. I wasn't paying attention. Did I hit buttons? There we go. Was founded in 2015 through an organization called the STEM Funders Network, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a group of funders nationally and internationally who've gotten together to sort of focus their efforts as opposed to being this kind of mishmash of efforts. They met with schools, they met with communities all around the country, and they found a couple of problems. Number one, there was a massive disconnect between education and the grand challenges that Paula was just talking about. Schools weren't talking about cybersecurity, about global finance, about sustainability, ecology, the problems that our students are facing. And number two, like the issue with my daughter, there's a very big deficit in our STEM careers of women and of students of color. We know, the research is back, right, that diversity of opinions is really, really good for all of us. And diversity of opinions sprouts from diversity of experience, diversity of background. So this is a problem that we have to solve. So, oops. Oh, did you already click? I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were clicking. Doesn't matter. This one? So, in 2015, the STEM ecosystem started with 27 communities. In 2016, an additional 10 were added to that. In 2017, 17 more. And June 1st, you're going to, if you look for it, if you go to STEMecosystems.org, you're going to see an announcement of an additional cohort of STEM ecosystems around the country and around the world. The initial focus was in the United States, but it's since expanded to Mexico, Israel, Egypt, Kenya, and more coming. Because we know that this is a global problem. This isn't a specifically defined problem to a regional area. What's really great about these STEM ecosystems is that they're focused on these big global challenges, but at a micro scale. When an ecosystem is formed, like-minded partners from around that area are put together, including universities, K-12 schools, funders, the local industries, local politicians, anybody who has a stake in the future of our cities, our states, our country, the world, and our children. I want to talk a little bit about that overlap with science fairs. Again, as I was walking around yesterday, as I was talking to people, you are all focused on the exact same things that we are. And I know that some of you, are any of you that are here engaged in the STEM ecosystem in your area? A couple? That's awesome. I'm really excited about that. I'm actually more excited about how few hands were up, because it's a really, really, really exciting opportunity for us and for all of you. We are so aligned that it makes nothing but sense for science fairs to be really tightly integrated into the ecosystem project. I want to talk a little bit about I think it's back to you, or do you? There we go. So what does an ecosystem look like when it's formed? If there is not already an ecosystem in your area, an official designated STEM ecosystem, then this is something that's applied for. As I mentioned, there's a cohort coming online this year. Each ecosystem is encouraged to bring together very vast stakeholders from their area to determine what the specific problems are in the region and to come up with ways to address them. So we're looking for collaboration across sectors. We're looking for some local funding that can support that work, and then an application to the STEM Ecosystems Project. Once that happens, you're invited to join a community of practice that meets virtually through a number of webinars and conference calls, but also in person twice a year in cities all around the country. We're in DC most recently. The next ecosystem convening is in November in Orange County, California. We pick an area that has an ecosystem presence, and everybody comes together. I don't know about you, but I go to a lot of conferences throughout the country, and I won't name them, but man, most of them are really boring and terrible, and you just hear things that you already know, right? The plus to them is that you've got some networking opportunities, but you don't learn a lot. I learn so much at each of these ecosystems convenings because the presenters are other ecosystems. They are you coming together to share out in a very informal way what is working, what's not working, and to find places where the ecosystems can collaborate together.
So I want to go back to a scary word there that Jeremy put out, which is funding. We're not looking for funding, and we're not going to take your funding. Actually, what I think about the model that is so important when you bring together like-minded STEM learning communities. You're all tied, many of you, to the school systems. We've been focusing for middle school on after school. As a company, we go to other companies and say get involved locally, which of course they like, and a lot of that is with manpower and woman power. It's not necessarily, they don't have a lot of dollars that they throw around, as we all know, but they do have people that can be judges, and they have people who can be mentors, and they have people who, within the sphere of their own interests, can get involved in, and the science fair can kind of be the jewel in the crown of their involvement if they have kids that are mentored or supported or otherwise engaged in science fair. So this is really, at the heart of it, what the ecosystems do. So if we were going to give you a charge today, and we've talked a little bit about all this 21st century, the 21st century skill set, and I actually did a TED Talk. If anybody looks me up, I talked about this for 20 minutes. If you want to know more, there's 20 minutes online. But one of the reasons why we think this is so important to share with you is that we really think you're in the best position of virtually any organization, nationwide and internationally, to call together the stakeholders in your community to talk about preparing kids for the future. We have no doubt of the strength of this group and its commitment to the 21st century skills. And I hope by knowing a little bit more about the urgency of this next revolution, the fourth revolution, Industry 4.0, that you will be kind of more prepared to have this conversation within your community of what is expected of our children and the world in which they're successful at it, but give you a platform and a mission that can inspire people in the community to understand the value of educating our kids for the 21st century and beyond and the grand challenges they face. So that's kind of it. Jeremy came up from Ohio, thankfully, to be with me today to share his thoughts. He's going to be around for the morning at Public Day. We'll be there. We're in our red shirts. You can find us. If you're interested in this at all and you contact Michelle or Maya, their interest in this is really, as mine is to make sure that your fairs stay robust. And we see this as a really exciting platform around the world that can help you achieve that. My kid, who's here from, my master's kid, our delegate from Egypt, is the product of us setting up an ecosystem in Egypt. We wouldn't have that student here today if it weren't for an experiment of going into Egypt and working really hard at the grassroots level. And we expect that we'll be seeing more kids come into science fair through an ecosystem mechanism which really primes the pipeline, primes the pump, builds the pipeline of kids, not only the ones that win our competitions, but the ones who participate, because in the end, we need every one of those kids if we're going to have a bright future on this wonderful blue planet we're fortunate to be living on. Thank you so much.